Hi, George here, helping you unlock your team's genius. Welcome to POP, Product Ownership Prowess. We're going to look at identifying stakeholder groups in a chapter around working with stakeholders. A very useful tool is the power versus interest grid. I've just come to call this influence versus interest grid. So we have some people in the organization or related to the product that have high influence over the fate of our product, if you will. And we have some areas that have varying degrees of interest in the product that we are working on. Now, before we look at using this, of course, the term stakeholders has different meanings. Originally, if you think about people going into new areas, new territories, and wanting to mark out their properties, they would drive a stake into the ground in order to claim a certain property, and that is the stake that they are holding. Nowadays, we have wider interpretations or definitions of the term stakeholder, and we can consider stakeholders at every group that has a vested interest in the outcome of our product. Now, when we're looking at this particular tool here and see how to map that, we can consider that we have ultimately 4 quadrants. So there is low influence and low interest down here. There is high influence and low interest over there. We have high influence and high interest over here. And we have low influence and high interest over here. Now, this is a tool for mapping stakeholders. So in order to work out what to do with these different types of stakeholder types, we can think about the 4 different quadrants in a sense where everybody with low influence and low interest, we want to be in a position where we keep an eye on it or keep just aware very remotely. High influence and low interest is an area where the people would be kept satisfied. Keep satisfied. And those where there is high influence and high interest, well, we would definitely want to keep those people engaged. Keep engaged. And then we've got people who have high interest but low influence. Now those people we want to keep informed. Okay, so let's use a few examples in order to bring this to life. In the more modern definition of stakeholdership, we could consider customers who pay for our product in some sense or form as stakeholders, and they are quite important to us, right? They have a high influence over the success of our product, and they are also hopefully quite interested if we're solving a real need for them. So we want to keep those rather engaged. Right. Then we could also consider users in here, yeah, and we would want to consider our team, of course, in here. Now it's debatable whether we want to see those as stakeholders, but for me personally, I think the team is an absolutely vital part. Without the team, there is no product. So we could keep them in here also, and of course we want to ensure that we have a very engaged team that cares about the users, cares about the product, and helps to solve for user needs on a daily basis. Now, let's come up with some other examples. We've got the keep informed section down here. So these are people that don't really have a lot of influence over the outcome of our product or the development of our product, but have some interest on it. So we could consider user groups in here or stakeholder groups that perhaps are involved with some sort of reporting if that is practiced in the organization. So let's say we've got some portfolio people in here who look after the product portfolios. And what about low influence and low interest that should just be kept aware of the product? So in here we could perhaps have sort of internal communications perhaps, right? What about high influence but low interest? So let's say there are some senior management stakeholders who have a lot on their plate. They do have high influence in the organization, but perhaps they're not as interested as other groups. So we want to keep them satisfied and perhaps involve them in stakeholder groups. So those are roughly 4 different types of stakeholder groups that we have mapped now. We could continue this, and ideally this is something that you could also do together with some of the stakeholders to see where they themselves might see them as part of that. So that concludes the short introduction to how to identify and map different stakeholder groups. If you found this useful, please kindly let me know by a like. If you've got queries for other product ownership related aspects that you'd like to find out more about, please let me know in the comments. And thank you very much for now. All the best for the practice with your team. Bye bye.